Hi guys! Welcome back to my channel. Na-miss ko magaganto dito sa camera. And if tatanungin nyo kung ano to, ayan, kinuha ko dyan sa... Yun na nga, medyo natagalan rin bago ako makapag-video ulit. Kasi nga na-busy rin naman sa trabaho at the same time. Wala pang kuryente and mahina pa ang signal. Kaya ngayon lang din ako gana para mag-video. And yun na nga, so syempre, it's been a long time. Dapat, sabi ko, dapat ang i-upload ko is yung may sense or may kapaki-pakinabang sa mga viewers ko. Let's do this real quick. Ang naisip kong English lesson is all about the topic that sabihin natin most of us are still confused on how to use these. And the lesson that I'm talking about is the use of in spite of and despite. So in this lesson or in this video lesson, there are 3 guide questions that we have to answer. It is a way for us to systematically understand and comprehend this topic. First guide question that we have to answer in this video lesson is, what are these words or what are in spite of and despite? Second question that we have to answer is, when do we use these words? And lastly, how do we use in spite of and despite? I think that's the most essential question that we have to answer and learn in this lesson. So if you wanted to learn and have the answers for these 3 guide questions that I have mentioned, continue to watch this video. And the first guide question that we have to answer is, what are these? What is in spite of and what is despite? Alright. For your information, when we say in spite of and despite, these are prepositional expressions. And these are also used to show contrast. What is contrast? When we talk about contrast, ito yung mahal mo pero hindi ka mahal. Something like that. And at the same time, when we talk about in spite of and despite, this is also the same with saying even though and although. For example,
you love him even though he doesn't love you.
that shows contrast using the word even though. And the answer to the second guide question that I have mentioned, actually it's already answered earlier in the first part. When do we use in spite of and despite? I have mentioned about contrast. When we are trying to show contrast in our statement, that's the time that we have to use in spite of and despite. Now, since we already have answered the 2 guide questions that I have mentioned earlier, let us now proceed to the third guide question, which is also the most important guide question among the 3, because this is the measurement if we really have understood the use of in spite of and despite. If you are one of those who are hesitant of using in spite of and despite kasi hindi nila alam when are they going to use in spite of and despite, or are they going to use in spite of or despite, this is the quick tip for you to know. First and foremost, it doesn't matter whether you're going to use in spite of or despite. Kasi nga, they both mean the same. They both mean even though, although, or kahit na. Nakapasa ako, kahit na, tamad ako. Or I passed the licensure examination for teacher, though I lack review. So it is just the same with saying even though and although. So that's the first thing that you have to remember. It doesn't matter kung in spite of or despite ang gagamitin mo. Ang kailangan mo lang malaman ay how you're going to use these prepositional expressions. Alright, you have to remember that when you use the word in spite of plus the noun. In spite of heavy traffic, or in spite of distance. And if you're going to use despite, you should never say despite of. That's wrong. That's a crime in English language. In spite of plus the noun. If you use despite, you do not use of. You only say despite plus the noun immediately. Despite distance, despite lack of time, despite oppositions, despite pandemic. In spite of plus noun and despite plus noun. You do not say despite of. Let me give you example of these prepositional expressions in sentences. He became professional in spite of poverty. He came at the right time in spite of heavy traffic.
You still love him despite the fact that he doesn't love you.
He passed the test despite the time pressure. So if you noticed how I used in spite of and despite, in spite of is immediately followed by a noun, and despite we do not use of, we just say despite plus the noun. And there's one more thing you have to also learn about the use of in spite of and despite. You may also use these prepositional expressions with gerund. What is gerund? These are verbs that end with ing. Reading, feeling. Example is, in spite of feeling bad, or in spite of getting lowest grade or lowest score, despite being absent, despite loving the wrong person. So that's it. Again and again, when you use in spite of, we just add the noun, and despite we do not say despite of, we just say despite plus the noun. And that's it for today. If you liked this video, if this video helped you, do not forget to click like. And if you are new to my channel, do not forget to subscribe.